Just go ahead and share my screen. Even if you can all see it. Thanks, it's all
Yep.
good.
You're ready.
Perfect. Thanks again, Amy, for the invitation, and happy to present you Yooz to all of you. I'm William Van Doren over at Yooz. I've been here for about 2 years. Today, I'm going to keep it sweet and short. We're going to spend about 15 minutes just look at a couple of slides, and then we'll dive into the product to look at a couple of use cases. So today we're going to talk about AP automation. AP stands for accounts payable. Just keep referring to the word AP just for ease of use. What we're going to be looking at is what are some real case and real use case examples on why companies should automate that part of their processes when it comes to the finance department in order to gain better visibility in the processes, improve the efficiency, as well as stopping fraud when it comes to company spend. So a couple of things first is that why the accounts payable department is under more pressure than ever. The transaction volume that keeps climbing over and over every single year, more business is happening, and there comes with more vendor issues. When it comes to the invoices to process, the calls that comes from the suppliers that are asking for where the payments is, these kind of things can be extremely frustrating for the employees, especially when you work on a manual basis or you use a lot of paper. This also leads up to, by using paper, running out of space when it's filed. Good luck finding it whenever you need it, especially when it comes to those audits period that the Evalera folks just talked about it earlier. So the whole idea here is to streamline as well as digitize the whole process when it comes to the accounts payable. Also, more on the human side, the employees are going to feel the strain when it comes to working manually, and especially with paper. Usually they would work up late. They would make some tiny errors here and there. They will just end up adding up all together. And then the cost isn't just financial, it's also going to be human. So the idea here is to reduce the time that's spent on doing those tasks in order to improve the cash flow, have better controls, and also on the financial side, make sure to gather and capture all discounts for paying early, as well as avoiding any potential late payments penalties that the company could be experiencing. Just from the a quick number perspective, if you guys are curious about it, about 85% of companies are still relying on paper or using semi-automated AP process, which is huge. I know we're talking a lot about the automation of the manufacturing world. Usually AP is one of these areas that's left a little bit untouched. Also, about a third of the invoices, they usually have to be worked on because they would be missing information such as an incorrect purchase order, missing BOLs, packing slips, or just overall mistakes made by the AP clerks that would be working on it. And then most of the finance teams and accounting teams are also chasing invoices at the top of the bottlenecks, draining a lot of the time they're spending on trying to pay them. And then lastly, before we get into the demo and get the interesting things, what Yooz is striving for is to bring real-time visibility into the financial statements and commitments of the organizations, reducing the processing costs automated with the invoice workflow. Usually we have those questions, especially when it comes to seasonality, or as a company grows, is are we hiring someone else in order to do the work? Are we automating if someone is retiring? And as you guys onboarding new team members, how do you make sure that they get up to speed efficiently and also they're following the process? Also, when it comes to use cases as handling multi-line, multi-format invoices, this is very important because not all vendors are sending invoices and documents the same way. And overall, for the leadership team is to free up some more time for the rest of their staff, just so can they focus on higher value tasks, such as making sure the relationships with the vendor is going well. You guys are capturing all the discounts that you can, having better terms as well negotiated, and overall running this business more smoothly. All right, I'm going to be sharing a different screen now, and we're going to get into the application. There we go. So we're going to be focusing on a couple of things here. The first one is we're going to look at how we're going to get the invoices inside the Yooz application. That's a standalone application. There is a direct connection to Business Central where all the data is going to be sent. So we're going to look at how we get those documents into the tool. we're going to look at the workflow that we can set in place in order to adapt to the current business processes of the clients and make sure that we're not having them to adapt to the tool, but more the tool to adapt to them. We're also going to look at a couple of examples when it comes to fraudulent documents, reconciling vendor statements, for example. We'll also look at the approvals when it comes to the users, and we'll also go through the document management system that we have. As you all can see on the very top left here, we're in the capture environment. So this is usually something that we'll set up at the very forefront of the application. We're just defining how we're getting the client's invoices inside the tool. There would usually be three methods for capturing them. The first one would be through email capture. So what we would do is just automatically route any AP inboxes of the business or any stakeholders that may receive invoices from vendors. They will be automatically forwarded into the Yooz application and centralizing them there. A second option, since we have a mobile app, users could take pictures of paper invoices and upload them directly into the tool, or just scan them with a printer and then send them into the application. And then the third one, which is very useful when it comes to utility bills, would be the vendor portal. That allows the companies to log on to the different portals of the vendors they work with, such as Amazon, Comcast, Verizon, you name it. Enter your credentials. Whenever they're going to drop an invoice inside their platform, is going to be pulled automatically into the Yooz application. So the whole idea here is to make sure that the team members don't have to go to different places in order to get those documents, but all of them are going to be centralized inside the tool itself. And then you can see over there the imported files. This is where you'd find all the history of the documents that got inside the tool so far. So from a user perspective, this is not really something that you'd spend too much time in. This is more something that you set up at the forefront just to make sure that everything flows the right way inside Yooz. Now, if we take a quick look at some of the workflows that we set up in this demo environment, we'll just go for the one for, we'll say, the regular invoices. And here, keep in mind, this is just an example. Obviously, processes are different for every company, and the whole goal is to adapt the platform to how it's currently operating inside the organization. It would be usually split out in three different phases. There would be the review phase. This is where usually the accounting specialist, they would make sure that the purchase order is correctly attached to the invoice, or there would be no discrepancy between the two. They will also make sure that the tool extracted the data correctly from the invoice. When the invoice comes in, the tool is going to read it, look at the characters, and put in the accounting fields automatically. And when this is going to be done, this will then move into an approval stage. So here you can see there's three different steps. All these steps are chronological, meaning this one is not going to happen until this one is completed. Usually what we see when it comes to routing for the approvals, we would have people having specific keywords they would be in charge of. Let's say if invoices would have the word Rolex, Gucci, Dior, that kind of things, probably in the manufacturing world, depending, obviously what you manufacture, those are probably not items that the business is going to be spending money on. So those could go directly to someone specific for approval. We could also have thresholds based on the dollar amounts on the invoice, making sure it requires one or more people to approve before it moves forward into the next step. And then for any perfect 100% match between the purchase order and the invoice, or the recurring utility bills that would have no variance, those could be automatically approved as well in order to be automatically sent into Business Central as posted, creating the accounting entries. So when all these steps are going to happen here in the approval, you can see on the right, we have this Google Map emoji, the accounting export. This is when we're going to create the accounting entries inside Business Central, alongside any audit trails, any supporting documents attached, as well as any comments left on the documents that we're going to see in a second. And then finally, if the company is interested in issuing payments directly from Yooz, this is also something that could be handled within the platform. We could have, for example, one person approving an invoice for payment, and another person actually issuing the payment based on the preference of the vendor, whether it's going to be an ACH, a check, a virtual credit cards, an EFT, if you're working with people over in Canada. When the payment is going to be issued, we'll have another export back into Business Central, marking the bill as paid, sending the remittance over to the vendor, as well as pushing the remittance over into Business Central, and here closing the loop. I think one thing to keep in mind here as we wrap up with that workflow part is that the whole idea is to adapt to how your business is currently functioning, not for you to fit in a specific box, and that's something that it is possible to adapt for every business. Now we're going to go into my tasks. And here you can see on the very top right, we're working as one of the accounting specialists. So this is kind of what they would be seeing on a day-to-day basis when it comes to working on the invoices they receive from your vendors, making sure that you guys are processing them on time. A couple of things. So here we have the ability to create any purchase requests and purchase orders within Yooz. Else, usually, if you do have the PO module enabled in Business Central and that's something that you use, once those purchase orders are going to be received inside Business Central, they will be pulled into Yooz and then match against the invoice. The section that are late is, let's say that you designed any documents is going to be flagged as late after 48 hours ago inside the system. This is where it would end up. You can think as the overdue task that I need to be working on. The complete sections, that would be for any invoice, 100% of the data has been extracted, but for whatever reason, we create a rule that says if it's above $100,000, we still want the accounting specialist to look at them before sending them for approval. And the documents that would be blocked is whenever we found there would be a duplicate, a fraudulent invoice, or an invoice from a vendor that does not exist in Business Central, for example. You'd be able to stop them in the workflow just to make sure that you don't pay until this is resolved. Then you'd be able to see all the to-do list of the things we have to work on for the day. So here we split it by entity as well per document type. So you can see we have a couple of PO-based invoices, non-PO-based invoices. And you can see here on the right, it says review, meaning the exact first step that we looked at in the workflow. And if I scroll down a little bit, I can see the in progress tab, and I can see where it is now in the process, which is the second step of the workflow, which is the approval step. What it means on a day-to-day is that when the invoice is worked on by the accounting specialist, they no longer have to go to their manager's desk or a business unit owner desk and get a signature from them. This is going to be sent directly to those folks that can get reminders, and they can be escalated if them is the SLA that's been put in place by the organization. So here, I want to show you two things. We're going to look at a vendor statement that we're going to try to reconcile against, as well as fraudulent documents and how we can identify fraud and protect organizations when it comes to phishing invoices. So as you open a document that you want to work on, this is what it would look like. You'd have the picture of either the invoice or the statement in this instance that would be living on the right. On the left, we would find the data that was extracted by the system. And you can see when I click on the document date, it's going to highlight where we found that data onto the actual document that got into the system. We'll find the dollar amounts, as well as the customer it's associated with. Now, you can see at the bottom, we found there's $10,000 on that statement. Now, if I scroll, if I expand this a little bit, there we go. We're going to find that the total amount that we found on the statement was $10,000. And then there's only $9,997 for the total amount of all the documents that we have in Yooz that you guys received so far. Now, the very nice thing is as you go on any specific line, it will tell you where it is on the lines that have been extracted. So it's easy to refer back to which one you're working on. If I were to click on the invoice number, it would actually open up the invoice that I received so far. And also telling you if the amount on the statement and the document is matching or not. In order to find any discrepancy, I can just click on the header and it will tell me which line is not matching. So I can quickly contact the vendor, ask for any resolution, and why there's a discrepancy between the two. I could also see what's the date of the document, where it is currently in the process, have we paid that invoice, and when is it due for. Now, in the event that you'd like to communicate with your vendor, it'd be pretty easy. What you can do is on the very top right, you can have the email icon, and by just selecting it, you'd be able to send an email to the vendor email address that exists on file for Business Central. You'd be able to type whatever subject that you want, as well as a message, as well as attach the actual documents that you want to send them over for them to look at. So here you can quickly keep all the communication within Yooz. And by doing the email sending like we just did, it recorded this action into the audit trail so you can keep track of who did what and when. Now, when it comes to non-PO invoices, I'll take this one as an example. Happy to get on another call with any of you separately if you'd like to cover the PO-based invoices in details. But here we'll try to keep it short. Here, very similar again, you'd find the picture of the invoice that would be on the right, the data that was extracted on the left. So here we'd find again the date, the document number, the due date, as well as the total dollar amount. Here, we could be tempted from user to submit it to the next person in the queue from the workflow that would then need to approve it. However, we do have a couple of alerts that would be up there on the left. The first one is that we found a duplicate. So by just clicking on a document, it would just populate whatever the duplicate that we've received so far inside the system. So by just zooming on it, I can see in this instance, it's simple document number duplicate. It would be a different date as well as a different dollar amount. Now, when it comes to duplicates, we can find 5 different data points, such as the invoice number, the date, the dollar amount across entities, and per document type. So we can be pretty creative when it comes to identifying any kind of duplicate. Now you can see that we're about $3,000 off between what's on the invoice and what's on the duplicate, which leads us to our second alert, which is the atypical amount. So here we're going to be doing standard deviation analysis on all the invoices that you receive from your vendors. So if there's any invoice that's outside of what you usually get, then we would flag it as being an atypical amount. Usually would be either you made an abnormally large order or someone fell asleep on the keyboard. So at least you'd have to work on this a little bit. This is more for the, I'm going to call them accounting errors that could happen. But when it comes more to the scrutiny for fraud detection, for every invoice that gets inside the system, they would go through the scanning of documents and would highlight if there is any things that look suspicious. Now, in this instance, it happened. So we created that fraud detection tab that was done automatically. And it's telling us that some information has been added to the invoice later than when it was created. And that's around the banking data information. So here, 2 things happen. The first one is whenever the document gets inside the tool and the data is extracted, we're going to do a pixel analysis, meaning that if any metadata has been modified from the moment the invoice was created by the vendor to the moment that was received over to you, we'll flag wherever that happened. We're also going to be doing PDF layer analysis in case someone try to alter the original invoice by just adding their own banking information in order to get the payments to the personal bank account, for example. So that's going to be very useful for any modified invoices. In the event that the business would receive a fake invoice made from the ground up, let's say from an AI model, someone stole the information of the vendor and makes it look pretty legit, what's going to happen again is when the invoice is going to be coming in the system and the data extracted, we'll be looking at the vendor, websites, phone number, address, wherever they want the invoice to be paid to. And if any of this data is different from what's in the source of record, which is Microsoft Business Central, we'll then also give a flag to the user for them to not process the invoice or contact the vendor directly. So on the previous example, we saw how to send an email directly to the vendor. So we could be doing the same thing again here, just to make sure that it is not a fake invoice. But in the meantime, what I could be doing is to block it. So I would not have it going to the next step of the process. And the reason I would be blocking it, I could say it's not compliant. When I close it and I just save what I did, it will then go into the block section, meaning that we're not going to be working on this invoice until we resolve what's going on here with the issue or the alert that we got on this document. Now, one more thing that I want to show you here is when it comes to the approval, what we wanted to do is to keep it simple. So here I'm just jumping into the shoes of the approver. The idea here is, think about it as you are a business owner, a business unit owner, or you're a controller. You're supposed to approve an invoice that your team member coded, and they said, are we good to go in order to send that over into Business Central? What would happen is by clicking on it on the document that you want to approve, here we're doing it for the web version. You can also do it from the mobile app version. That's usually very useful for people that are not specifically in the office. You would be seeing the actual document that go inside the system, all the data that was extracted, wherever the invoice is going to be coded to, what are going to be the dimensions. Obviously, those are different from your businesses, but those are going to be adapted in implementation to make sure it fits your environment. And then either I could approve it, so then I will create the accounting entry inside Business Central, or I could send it back to the previous person that was working on it and ask them to make any changes, just to make sure that it actually comes back the right way over to us. Else, I could always forward it to someone else in the organization that's not supposed to be part of the workflow, but it still needs to approve it. And then finally, on the approval part, is that we know that approvers, they're probably not going to be waiting for every single invoice to come in to approve. They're most likely going to do batch approvals. So you're going to be able to go into the complete section, select all the documents that are ready to be approved, and process them all as a batch. And then this is when I'm going to be creating all the accounting entries inside Business Central, assuming that here in this case, we are the very last person that needs to approve these invoices before they are pushed over into Business Central. I think I have 1 or 2 minutes left, so I'm going to do one more thing to show you. It's going to be for just the document management. We have a search function. So any documents that get inside the application, we're going to store them for 7 years for financial reporting purposes. So that's something that you can pull up and show to your auditors anytime. You can also give them a view-only access, read-only access, so they don't mess up any of the coding. Here we're just looking at the documents that came into the last 12 months. We could also add criteria such as a total amount that was greater or equal to $500, and then have our search. But to show you kind of like the extent of the search function is that you can just type an actual keyword that you just remember on the invoice or in a document that came in, click on the results, it will open up the document. And then what you could do is look for the keyword again, and here you'd find it. All that to say that any piece of data that would be on an invoice or in the coding of an invoice, we could create a rule or a workflow out of it, just to show you how customizable and configurable the platform is. Couple more things that we could have covered today in terms of examples that would have been PO-based invoices, how we can reconcile against them, highlight any discrepancies, or automating the payments directly from Yooz, or even looking at the reporting and dashboards when it comes to looking at good receivement orders, aging reports, accrual reports, forecasting. But I'll just leave this part out of the demo for today, just so if you guys are interested, I'm happy to get on the call with you to show you a little bit more about the platform itself.